They called him Rain in the Face. A name that once carried fear across the frontier, whispered in trading posts and army camps alike. A name earned in blood, in a boyhood scuffle where paint and blood mixed and dripped down his cheeks like falling rain. Yet it wasn't the childhood fights, nor the raids against enemy tribes, that fixed Rain in the Face forever in the stories of the Old West. It was that one June day in 1876, when the smell of gunpowder hung over the Little Bighorn. A day of chaos, shouting, and sudden death, etched into memory by every man who survived. Rain in the Face, by then a seasoned warrior of the Hunkpapa Sioux, found himself drawn by duty, rage, and something older still, the warrior's call to stand against those who came to seize their lands. But even he could not foresee how that day would unfold, or how his name would be bound to the fate of George Armstrong Custer and the men who rode with him. He had joined thousands of Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho gathered by the Little Bighorn River. Some came for safety, others drawn by visions of Sitting Bull, who spoke of soldiers falling like grass before the storm. They believed they could fight, perhaps for the last time, to remain free. The morning had started quietly. Rain in the Face was among other warriors, sharing food in a young men's lodge, the air heavy with dust and distant heat. They spoke of plans, feasts, the rumor of Crow scouts nearby. No one guessed the battle would find them so soon. But then, without warning, came the war cry. A single rider raced in from the edge of camp, his horse slick with sweat, shouting that soldiers had appeared at the lower end of the sprawling village. The noise of distant rifles drifted over the river, sharper and quicker than the heavier booms of Indian muskets. Rain in the Face moved quickly. He grabbed his rifle, his bow, arrows, and the stone war club he often carried more for honor than use. Outside, the village exploded into motion. Warriors ran for horses, mothers pulled children into hiding, and the chanting of elders rose like a drumbeat against fear. Alongside men young and old, Ogalalas, Minneconjous, Cheyennes, Unkpapas, Rain in the Face galloped toward the river crossing. In the press of riders, he shouted a challenge, reminding them that a woman, Tashinamani, moving robe woman, had joined the charge to avenge her slain brother. And none could let her bravery outshine theirs. Across the river, soldiers under Major Reno had begun firing from the bluffs, hoping to drive the warriors back. Rain in the Face saw the flashes of their carbines, smoke curling upward in the hot wind. The young warriors moved fast, some circling wide, others charging straight at the soldiers. Rain in the Face remembered the thunder of hooves, the choking dust, the arrows loosed and the sharp cracks of rifle fire. Reno's men began to falter. Pinned by gunfire from all sides, they fell back, seeking cover among the cottonwoods by the river. In those moments, Rain in the Face saw what desperation looked like, soldiers dismounting, firing wildly, some remounting only to be shot down mid-turn. He had once thought white soldiers cowardly, but that day he saw men who fought on, even when surrounded. Further upstream, a separate force under the long-haired chief, Custer himself, approached the village from the north. Custer hoped to catch the non-combatants, to force a quick surrender. But what he found was the fury of warriors who refused to run. The exact order of those moments blurred in the smoke and chaos. Rain in the Face later spoke of two movements among his people, a circle of riders who never stopped moving, firing from the saddle, and another wave of braver men who crashed directly into the lines of soldiers. Among them were those so young they carried only a war club or a coup stick, fearless beyond reason. They struck fast. The soldiers dismounted to hold their ground, forming skirmish lines along the ridges. But as more warriors poured across the river, the balance shifted. The Lakota and Cheyenne pressed closer, arrows falling among the bluecoats like rain, bullets seeking horses to break the soldiers' defense. Some say an unknown young warrior, armed only with a war staff, charged straight into the ranks and struck down the officer who raised his sword overhead, shouting orders. In the confusion, someone shot that officer, many believed it to be Custer himself, and he fell before he could rally his men. No one truly knew who fired the fatal shot. In the rush of battle, names vanished, only deeds remained. Rain in the Face, like others, counted coup when the fight was done. It was a custom older than memory. The first to touch the fallen enemy earned the highest honor, marked by a feather. There were stories later, whispers that appearing elk, a warrior slightly wounded in the charge, carried off Custer's sword and so must have slain him. But Rain in the Face doubted this, believing if anyone had struck the final blow, he would have claimed it openly after the fight. The chaos after victory was almost worse than the battle itself. Rain in the Face recalled young warriors chasing terrified horses across the plains, while older men and women stripped the dead of weapons and gear. He insisted that if bodies were mutilated, it was the old ones who did it, driven by grief and hatred built over years of war and betrayal. Accusations came later. Some claimed Rain in the Face had cut out Tom Custer's heart in revenge for being imprisoned by him the year before. Rain in the Face denied it, calling them lies born from white fear and the need to make savagery out of resistance. He admitted he might not have recognized even his own kin in that whirlwind of blood and smoke. Everything happened faster than thought. What mattered to him was that they had stood and fought. They had driven back the long-haired chief and his soldiers, men who had come believing the Indians would scatter at the first volley. Instead, the 7th Cavalry lay dead on the ridges, and Rain in the Face's people stood, bruised but unbroken. Yet victory could not last. The army would come again, in greater numbers. Rain in the Face knew, even then, that freedom could be won in a day but lost in a season. He saw it in the faces of the elders and the weariness of the young warriors, who had glimpsed how high the price of defiance could climb. Years later, as an old man on the reservation, Rain in the Face reflected on those hours. He spoke without boasting, his voice marked more by sorrow than pride. He said the spirit of Rain in the Face had died when he laid down his weapons before the Great Father in Washington. What remained was only a body waiting to follow it. Some historians doubt his words, comparing them to another account, coaxed from him by a journalist with drink. One version says he knew who killed Custer, another that no one could know, that it was like fighting in darkness. One says he cut out Tom Custer's heart, another that he never did. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between, or perhaps the truth died with the men who rode into that valley and never returned. What survives is the memory of that day, the desperate charge, the wild courage, the moment when warriors and soldiers alike faced death under the summer sun. And Rain in the Face remains, in story if not in flesh, a symbol of a people who fought, not because they dreamed of conquest, but because they could not bear to surrender the earth that held the bones of their fathers. They called him Rain in the Face because blood and rain had once streaked across his cheeks in battle. But it was at the Little Bighorn that his name became legend, bound forever to the last stand of Custer and to the last great victory of the Free Plains tribes. In the end, perhaps that is all history can give us, not certainty, but the echo of hoofbeats, the smell of gunpowder, and the memory of men like Rain in the Face, who stood, when to stand was all that remained.